everybody. Welcome to the Hidden Gems podcast. I'm Rachel's Reviews. We're so excited to have you with us. And today we are diving into a new streaming service that we have not covered on this podcast yet. We're talking about Tubi TV, and it's very fun. We're looking forward to it. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Ryan is here.
Hey Rachel, so great to be back with you once again. This is my favorite thing to do. This is my favorite thing to do, talking about movies with you on this podcast. And so whenever I get to do this, I get a little extra pep in my step, and it just makes me smile. And today is especially exciting because we're talking about Tubi. We're making one small step for man, one giant leap for to be kind. I have no idea where that analogy was going, but I'm sure our I'm sure everybody knows my point.
Very good. Yes, I think so. And yes, so this was requested by a number of people that they said we got to review Tubi, we got to review Tubi, and it's a streaming service that is free service, and you can enjoy a whole bunch of films. We'll talk a little bit more about our feelings about the service. I mean, you can't complain too much because it's free. But uh, yeah. So how have you been doing? Have you been enjoying your this November weather and November time here?
Yeah, my one complaint is that daylight savings time is hit, and by 6 o'clock it is completely pitch black, and I don't know how to take it because it's like why is it dark? It's not even 6:15, and I can't see my hand in front of my
Yeah,
face.
our daylight savings time ruins every time, right? Uh, well, all right. Well, let's talk about Tubi. So, when you take a look at this is an app that you can download. What did you think overall of this service?
Well, when it comes to most free streaming services, there's a part of me that's like, oh boy, like lower your standards just a tad. Because when it comes to free services, they normally have on their advertisements like a couple big movies, and then literally that's about it. Then they have like Sharktopus versus Mega Gator, or just very, very bad Christian movies and awful monster movies. And I love monster movies, but even I have standards. And it's just you gotta like take it all with a grain of salt. But I was actually surprised that I found enough on Tubi to where I was like, I actually had to cut some, and I don't think it was something like, say, HBO Max or Netflix or anything like that. But when I was going through it, I was like, I could easily make like a 10 recommendation list, because there were some that made it to the cutting room floor, and I'll talk about one of them. It was Apocalypto, which was the movie from Mel Gibson. That was from around the time when he made those very awful comments about everything like that. And Apocalypto is actually a pretty good movie. It's told all in Mayan, but it all has subtitles, and it's a very well made movie. All the action is absolutely pristine, and just it's a very good movie. But I don't think people would be necessarily up for an action movie where everybody is speaking ancient Mayan. So it was
Mm.
just a matter of, okay, maybe that's left on the back burner. And then I also found V for Vendetta on there, which is an excellent movie, but everyone I've spoken to has nothing but high praise for it, so it's not necessarily hidden.
Yeah, there's some really acclaimed movies that I just haven't right now, with it being so busy, I haven't had a chance to watch them. Like Zero Dark 30 is on Tubi. And so that, that's very highly praised. I just so busy, I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Yeah, because
But
those 12.5 million Christmas movies you got to watch and
That's
eventually
right.
review are not going to watch and review themselves.
No, they don't. Yes. And I do think that this is probably the roughest selection that I've had to pick from of any of the sources that we've looked at. But particularly, I thought the kids section was really rough. Like a lot of cheap copycats of Pixar movies, or like these or DreamWorks movies, these like Kung Pao Panda, or something that'll be very similar to the mainstream stuff, but it'll be a cheap knockoff. There's a lot of that on here and that kind of thing. So it's interesting, but again, it's free. Like, what I mean, and you don't have to have a subscription. You don't have to. So if whatever you find, there's less ads than a lot of these other services. You have to watch a few ads. Whatever you find, free 99, my favorite price.
Yeah, and with some of those, you just gotta shrug your shoulders and just be like, you get exactly what you pay for.
Yes.
And it's like, I remember coming across Kung Pao Panda or whatever it was called, and I was saying to myself, this is literally the mommy, can we have Kung Fu Panda? And the mom's like, oh, we have Kung Fu Panda at home, Kung Pao Panda.
Yeah, that's right. Like, no, this is not. This is disturbing. Yeah. So make sure you make sure you're watching the real deal, not these imitations. But let's dive in. Our recommendations. I have a pretty eclectic mix this week. So I'll start. My first choice is a movie called Becoming Jane. And this is a movie that is kind of it's kind of a fictionalized a portrayal of Jane Austen's life and how it was the inspiration for writing Pride and Prejudice. There's some evidence, I think, that the James McAvoy character, that he was a real person, but a lot of the stuff in the film is sort of a fantasy or a conjecture based on her letters and things like that. But nevertheless, there's this man named Thomas that she comes in contact with and has this romance with. Jane Austen, played by Anne Hathaway, who's a really wonderful actress. And it's fun, especially if you're an Austenite like I am, to kind of hear her story and to imagine that she wrote Pride and Prejudice, her most iconic novel, after this romance that she had, and this because Lizzie is such an independent, strong character, that for her to then to be inspired by Jane herself was just kind of fun to think about. And of course it's done with all sort of the lushness of a period piece that you want. It's a little dry, if I'm completely honest. It can be a little boring, this one, even for me, but I still like it overall, and I think it's definitely worth watching if you like these kinds of movies.
Yeah, to show that I am a man of culture, I love pro wrestling, and I've also read Pride and Prejudice. It's a great book, and I read it last year because I was like, I've heard nothing but good things.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's any good, and it turned out to be really good. So just to show that I
Very
can
good.
go from one extreme to the other.
Well, a lot of people kind of dismiss Austen as writing about romance. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and not that that's easy. It's very difficult, but it's not just that. That her characters are actually, the romance is fairly minimal compared to kind of what we think of it as. Like, there's almost no romantic dialogue in Austen's writing, very little, only in Emma. And most of the time when the characters are being romantic, it says something like, he said what was appropriate for a man desperately in love, or something like that. I'm like, no, I want to know what he said. Don't say that. But she doesn't tend to have a lot of romantic dialogue. It's all about the characters. And in that day and age, that was the choice that the characters had, was who they were going to marry. That's what women had to do. And so that's where the drama lies. And her characters are very bold for that time. I mean, for spoiler alert to Pride and Prejudice, but for Lizzie to reject Darcy was incredibly bold of her character to do. And so her, I think that's what makes them hold up for modern audiences so much, is that her characters are really easy to relate to because they are honest and bold and true. And so I mean, I love Austen. I For years and years before I started producing like 5 podcasts a week, I used to read all the Jane Austen books every year, all 5, and I just love them so much. So I this is not the greatest movie ever made, but it's certainly worth a watch in my opinion. Good acting, and
Yeah,
it's fun to
and
see that behind the scenes.
yeah, and there ain't nothing wrong with writing romance. I mean, look at Nicholas
That's
Sparks.
right.
He made an entire career doing that.
Yeah.
And there's actually a pretty famous director, fun fact, that has passed away in the past couple of years that never wanted to do horror movies. He wanted to do romance movies, and that director was Wes Craven.
Oh
We
yeah,
all know
that's interesting.
we all know him for The Hills Have Eyes and Nightmare on Elm
Yeah.
Street and Scream, but he always wanted to do romance movies and saw horror as just his foot in the door. But
Mm-hmm.
obviously, he became the master of horror for literally his entire
Yeah.
career. There's actually an in joke in either Scream 2 or 3, I can't remember which one, where there's a director making the movie within the movie. And in an interview, he says, "Oh, I really don't like doing horror movies. I want to do romances."
That's
So it
interesting.
doesn't really have anything to do with Austin, but when we were talking about, ain't nothing wrong with romances, it just, that fact just kind of popped into my head.
Yeah, and people think it's easy, and it is not. It is definitely very difficult. So, what's your first pick?
So my first pick is from 2014, and it is called Draft Day. This stars Kevin Costner, which, ironically enough, cheap plug, we talked about our best and worst of Kevin Costner last week, and that was a lot of fun. So go check
Hmm.
that out. But in Draft Day, he plays a man named Sonny Weaver Jr., who is the general manager of the Cleveland Browns football team. And this all takes place on one day, the day of the NFL draft. And basically, to streamline the whole plot, he basically has to play multiple sides against each other to try to, at the end of the day, get the players that he needs to get in order to win the Super Bowl. I went into this movie with kind of little to no expectations because I think the 2010s were a bit of an off decade for Costner. I liked him in movies like Molly's Game and the DCEU and stuff like that, but he picked really weird choices like 3 Days to Kill and Criminal and etc. But here, he's actually really good. You can actually feel his frustration like throughout the entire movie because he starts out and he's like, okay, I'm going to make this choice, and literally everybody is trying to sway him their side, and he just remains firm in his belief despite everybody saying you're stupid, you're an idiot, like you're going to sink the team. He stays the course. This has a pretty loaded cast. Costner, like I mentioned, Jennifer Garner's in there as well. She's great. uh Dennis Leary is in there as the bitter head coach, and he's a lot of fun. Frank Langella has a bit part in there, and he's great as well. But one of the highlights of the movie, at least for me, is the late Chadwick Boseman, who plays the star player who just narrowly got edged out of being the number one draft pick, or so he thinks. He, when I first saw this movie, there's a plot point where Boseman's character kind of buries Sonny Weaver Jr. on Twitter. And I was thinking, oh, no one would ever do that. And then, of course, in 2020, literally everybody does that. So what did I know? And the back and forth between Boseman and Costner is so underrated. It's so well done. There's a phone conversation where Weaver just straight up says, "You can't talk about people on Twitter like that, and you just can't." And Bozeman's like, "You made the wrong decision," and they just have a great game of like mental chess. And the payoff to that whole story arc is just wonderful. This is not only a very underrated movie, but a very underrated football movie. And I think I talk about sports movies more than I should on this podcast, but it is what it is. It's one of those movies that I don't think really a ton of people talk about, and I think people should.
Yeah, I really like this movie too. I'd say it's definitely underrated. I think that if the exact same script and movie had Aaron Sorkin behind it, it would be huge. Like, oh, it's so amazing. But because it doesn't have like the name Candy, even though it is directed by Ivan Reitman, who's great, of course, it's
He's a
Ghostbusters.
legend.
Yeah. So I think it would I think it's on that level. I really do. I think it's got a really good script. I think it's very exciting, and I mean, it's such a there's it's such a not heated. I can think of it such an intense day, perfect place to make this kind of movie because so many people are looking at it and depending on it, and so much happens, so many decisions happen in a very short period of time. So yeah, I think like I said, I think this definitely an underrated film with a really great cast and a good script. And it's well directed, it's entertaining, it's interesting. You don't have to be into sports because it's not about sports. It's just about the making these decisions in a very short period of time.
Yeah, the movie kind of feels like an 8-lane super highway where everyone's getting off the ramp and then back on, and then trying to navigate their way through the various turns and stuff. But at the
Hmm.
end, everybody meets at the very end, and everything works out perfectly. It's like setting up a whole thing of dominoes and then knocking them over. It's
Hmm.
very satisfying.
Yeah, I agree. Well, my next pick is one that we both had. We kind of had a little fight over it. Who's going to get it? And it is Shaun the Sheep, the movie. And this movie is so cute. It's based on the television show that they have over there in the UK, stop motion animation, Shaun the Sheep. Basically, in this movie, Shaun the Sheep is bored and wanting to get out of the farm, and so they developed the scheme that they are going to go and have a holiday in the big city. And when they're there, all kinds of shenanigans happen. And it really has the feel of a silent movie with something like Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin. And it's so funny and cute. I love the whole sequence when they're going to dinner. I think it's hilarious. I love the whole thing with the farmer losing his memory and then he becomes a hairstylist and it's great. I love the animation. I'm a huge stop motion nut. And I really enjoyed Farmageddon this year as well, which is the follow up to Shaun the Sheep, a movie. But this one, it's delightful.
Yeah, Farmageddon gave us an alien that's giving Baby Yoda a run for its money
Oh,
in the amusement
yes.
department. Because
Mm-hmm.
good lord, that thing is adorable. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Shaun the Sheep the movie is it is really 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 good. I saw this with my friend who now lives in Maine. He and I went to our local theater to see it. We were like the only people in there, which was
Uh-huh.
sad, but both of us really 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 enjoyed it. And it's sad because, like you mentioned, Rachel, the animation in this is absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's from Aardman Studios, so of course it's going to be excellent. But unfortunately, they're kind of in like the position that like Leica Studios is in, that their movies are all incredibly respected, yet nobody really goes to see them, and that I think that's just very sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can't understand why. I mean, like I understand more because their films tend to be darker and not for little kids, and so I guess I can understand that. But I don't understand with the Aardman. Their films have been so delightful and funny, and I mean, I'm hoping with this Chicken Run 2 that it kind of uh, it gets people back kind of in team Aardman because it just doesn't seem like they are able to get the momentum that this even sort of really terrible CGI movies are able to somehow get. I mean, it's bizarre. And I don't know if it's just stop motion is out of fashion or I don't know what it is because this movie was so cute. It's so funny, and I don't know. Every kid who actually does watch it that I've ever heard of really likes it. So what are you gonna do? But yeah. So what's your next pick?
Yeah. One more note before we move on. Literally every piece of dialogue in Shaun the Sheep the movie is like and
That's
or
right.
like oh, and it's pantomime, but like you said, it's like a combination of Buster Keaton's action with like Charlie Chaplin's storytelling,
Yeah.
or I think you said something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That's right. That's what I think, at least, for sure. All right. What's your next pick?
So my next pick is from 2015, and it is called Black Mass. This is the true story of a very, very dark and dangerous human being in the form of James Whitey Bulger, who was about as close to a mafia figure as we'll ever get, at least in like our modern time, if you want to count the 1980s as our modern time. Uh, Whitey Bulger was played by Johnny Depp, and I will stand firm on this hill in that this is Johnny Depp's very best performance. For a literal human decade, he essentially played Captain Jack Sparrow just with a different coat of paint on, literally. And his dialogue could all just be reduced to, "I'm sorry, have I threatened you before?" And he just disappeared into this caricature of Captain Jack Sparrow, but he's an Indian this time, and Captain Jack Sparrow, but oh, he's the Mad Hatter now, and just it's a facepalm because it's a facepalm moment because Johnny Depp is an excellent actor. Well, Black Mass was where he finally reclaimed his throne. He disappears into this role. Like Whitey Bulger is just a horrible person. Like he just stands there with his arms crossed all the time, looking condescending at you, and just he knows that he's 3 steps ahead of literally everyone else, and has the creepiest laugh you would ever see. He would be like, and you're just like, remind me to stay socially distanced away from you. and and Johnny Depp absolutely just nails it. Also in this movie is Joel Edgerton, and of course Joel Edgerton is awesome in everything he's in. But this is the Johnny Depp show. My one complaint is that I wish the movie were longer. I could go for this, but in like the Godfather type of length, where it's like 3 hours and 5 minutes of the true rise, then like the climax, and then the fall. Because the fall of Whitey Bulger is just like a couple scenes, and then we get a where did he end up, which was very sad. But at the end of the day, Black Mass is one of those movies it's a very underrated in terms of mob or gangster movies or whatever we're calling them nowadays. And again, it's Johnny Depp's very best.
There we go. Yeah, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the movie. So that's a really interesting. You want the Irishman, but in Black Mass.
Well,
Long.
at the very least, I can buy that Johnny Depp is around that same age and not Robert De Niro,
Right.
who's 70s, but just had his face smoothed over in Photoshop.
That's
But
true.
that's another conversation for another time.
All right. Well, talking about, as you like to say, a hard left for my next one. So it's Christmas time. So perfect time to watch a Hallmark classic called All I Want for Christmas. And this wasn't made by Hallmark because it was 2007 before Hallmark Channel even existed, but they have it airing and it's considered kind of a Hallmark classic. So this movie is such a good movie. I love it. It stars Gail O'Grady and Robert Mailhouse, and basically they are like BFFs. Of course, he kind of is in love with her, but he's just sort of settled for that they're just going to be BFFs, and he's basically like the surrogate father for her son. And but she's kind of depressed, but like not that much because she's a widow and she just kind of accepted that she's not going to find anybody, and she's just gotten kind of used to this relationship with this guy. Anyway, so one day her son enters this video contest where they have to answer what they want for Christmas. So he sends in the video, and it's all I want for Christmas is a new husband for my mom. And so they get really, really excited, and, and they select him. And so she starts going on all these dates. And of course, as she's like dating for the contest, it's making the Robert Milhouse character very uncomfortable. And then she meets the son of the head of the toy company that is sponsoring the contest, and they start dating and things just get all kinds of messy, and it's just really cute. If you want a very, very, very fun romantic Christmas movie, then this is where you go. This is classic.
Yeah, this is automatically a good Christmas movie because it's directed by a man whose last name is Frost.
Yeah, good point. That's true.
I wonder how his son Jack is doing. You know, he seemed pretty precocious in that movie, Rise of the Guardians.
Yeah, I think if they didn't name his kid Jack, that'd be a real missed opportunity. I mean, come on.
I would love to be a fly on the wall during roll call in elementary school. It'd be like Erickson, Emery, Frost,
Yeah.
here.
And he did a bunch of old school. He hasn't done anything for a long time, but some fan favorites for Hallmark Channel. Things like Let It Snow, which is a big favorite. He did another one called Love is a Four-Letter Word, which is a favorite. So this one is good though. It really is very sweet, and the whole idea of the reason why she does the contest is that she runs a soup kitchen, and so they're hoping that the exposure with the soup kitchen will bring in more donations and everything like that. And so yeah, it's really cute. I think they would like it.
And you said this was made before Hallmark was a thing, yet Hallmark shows it every year.
Yeah, it's they when did Hallmark Channel?
Because I think
See.
when
It
we
was
were
before Countdown to Christmas, long before. Let me find out when Hallmark Channel first Christmas movie that they ever did, because like when they were first starting back in 2005 2006, they were totally different. They were doing like they're actually science fiction, and there's all these weird sci-fi movies like End of the World and stuff like that. And they also aired Star Trek when they first started Hallmark Channel.
oh wow.
And yeah, they were like the home of Star Trek. And then they started the Mysteries Channel in 2005. And then the very first Christmas movie, I think, was in 2006. In 2005, it was Meet the Santas. And then, but Countdown to Christmas didn't start until like 2013, I think. Anyway, you don't care about all this, but it was not the Hallmark Channel like we know today.
Coming up next on Hallmark Movies and Mysteries, Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Right, it's true. It's really true. And they had like a period where they were strictly a religious channel, and yeah, so they've had a lot of variations that have gone on with Hallmark Channel. It's pretty interesting that yeah, they have some really funny. They even have a pandemic movie that we reviewed on the on Hallmark's podcast from
oh God, already?
yeah. No, it was way back in 2007. They had a pandemic. I'm telling you, they went through like the sci-fi phase that anyway, so we covered it on the podcast in March.
I'm gonna say those people at Hallmark, they have a crystal ball and they're hiding it from us.
Yeah, it has Tiffany Amber Thiessen, or Tiffany Thiessen. I don't know what she's called now, but anyway. But it really, back to the point. This All I Want for Christmas is really cute movie. It's really good about this kid. He makes this movie, he makes this video, he wants his mom to find a husband. It's very cute.
Totes adorbs.
Yes. So what is your next pick?
So my next pick is from 2017, and this is the last movie in the 2010s, I promise. And this was one of my favorite movies of that year that nobody talked about, and it was called Wind River. This was
Mhm.
written and directed by Taylor Sheridan. Taylor Sheridan is best known for writing the script for Hell or High Water, a movie that I have talked about top in our favorite and least favorite of Ben Foster videos. And he also wrote the screenplay for Sicario from Denis Villeneuve, and Wind River was his outing where he wrote and actually directed it as well. It tells the story of a wildlife ranger played by Jeremy Renner who learns of a brutal rape and murder happening on the Wind River Indian Reservation. And so he goes and investigates alongside an FBI agent played by uh, Scarlet
Eliz-
Witch,
Elizabeth
Elizabeth
Olsen.
Olsen. And this movie, I think, was unfortunately swept under the rug just a tad bit because it was released around October of 2017. And we all know what happened in October of 2017, considering that this movie was distributed by the Weinstein Company. And I'll let you put two and two together to create four. But I think that's a shame because this is actually a low key, very excellent movie. Sheridan made it because he felt that he wanted to bring attention to the fact that a lot of Native American women are unfortunately victims of sexual assault. And they actually have a title card at the end of the movie that says there's a study that keeps track of every race and gender that are the victim of sexual assault, and they make a point of saying Native American women is currently unknown. And that just struck such a chord with me because it's like got a really well made movie. It was very well shot, very well acted, and then they leave you with a message like that. It's a movie with a message, but it's not like directly in your face. It
Yeah.
they do a good movie first and then they leave you with something to think about. I
Mhm.
liked that. I liked the spirit of that. Jeremy Renner is of course really good in the movie, and Elizabeth Olsen is as well. The movie looks tremendous. I think Taylor Sheridan's movies, all of them that he's been involved with, have looked absolutely excellent. And he's actually said that this was a part of an unofficial trilogy that also involved Sicario and Hell or High Water that he called the new story of the American frontier, which again, it's unofficial, but I just like the sound of that. I think Wind River was the victim of unfortunate timing because of everything that happened with the whole Weinstein thing. But I think if it had come out at literally any other point in that year or the previous year or the year after that, I think it would have gotten significantly more buzz. And I'm sad that it didn't because it was really good.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. It does a great job of establishing atmosphere and tone, which you definitely need for this kind of piece. My only flaw with the movie, I would say, is that I think the writing on Elizabeth Olsen's character could have been a little bit better. She's supposed to be this investigator brought in as a special, as a special investigator that's an expert, and she doesn't like know to bring a coat with her. Like there's some stuff that's just kind of like, okay. I don't know. I So that was my only problem with the movie, but I still overall I really thought it was an excellent film. So
Yeah, that's totally understandable. I that's something I never really considered because it was not out of anything like on purpose. I just never really thought about that before.
yeah. Yeah, but definitely worth watching. I recommend it. It's good. Okay, so then my next suggestion is a little bit of an obscure animated film. Maybe we even do it for obscure animation. I would be up for it. It's pretty good. It's called Jack and the Cuckoo Clock Heart. And this comes out of France. It's actually based on this album by this French rock band called Dionysus, I guess. Dionysus, or however you say it in French. And it's about this boy who is born with a frozen heart, and so he gets a clock put in for his heart, and he's given the rules of the heart is that he can never play with the hands of the heart of the clock, and he can't lose his temper, and he cannot fall in love. And of course, those rules create all kinds of problems. And this has, it's beautiful. The animation is really nice. And of course, the music is really good. They do a great job incorporating the music. And it's an unusual, interesting, fun story. And so I think it's worth a watch. It's beautiful. And yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, when I was doing my research, I saw a thing on IMDb that said you can watch this on Shout Factory TV, and I was thinking to myself, oh, Shout Factory is where they have all the obscure horror movies from like the late 70s and the early 80s. I wouldn't have been able to see I probably wouldn't have been able to see The Howling without Shout Factory or The Fog. So I owe those guys a lot. They really do a good job with stuff like that. So I'll definitely have to check out Jack and the Cuckoo Clock Heart.
Yeah.
That's all. I know how to say words.
It's a good one. I enjoyed it. So, what's your next pick?
So my next pick is from 1969, and it is called "Destroy All Monsters." This was supposed to be the end of the Japanese Godzilla movies from Toho, but obviously that didn't happen. I'll explain that in a little bit. The plot of the movie is that in 1999, the Earth has achieved world peace, and all of the world's monsters, Godzilla, Gigan, uh, the son of Godzilla, Mothra, all of them are living on an island, ironically also called Monster Island. But an alien race comes down and takes over the minds of all of these monsters and forces them to invade all of Earth's cities. And just when they think they have them under control, they bring in their secret weapon, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, which is a space dragon who can breathe lightning. Stay with me, I promise. The movie is similar to like today's modern Godzillas in that it has a little bit maybe too much of a focus on the humans. There's a big subplot about the humans trying to break the mind control of the aliens so that Godzilla and Mothra and all of them can fight for their side. But once the last 30 minutes hits, oh, business picks up in a good way because this is a royal rumble of just of monsters that's just so satisfying to watch. It's Ghidorah, a three-headed space dragon that can breathe lightning, versus Mothra, a giant moth. Stay with me. A giant turtle. Godzilla, his son, whose only real weapon is a smoke ring that can strangle somebody. I know. And it's supremely cheesy, but it's also in the best way possible. It's they don't really make movies like this anymore with just dudes in suits. This would all be done with CGI today. But I recommend it because it is such a showing of ingenuity on the part of Toho to take all of their monsters except for King Kong, which is technically universal, and throw them all together as to say, all right, these will never be shown again, so let's go out in style. And obviously, uh, obviously Godzilla movies are still being made in Japan to this day, with Shin Godzilla in 2016, and they just made an announcement of a sequel to that coming very soon. And of course, there's being Godzilla movies being made in America from Legendary Studios. So the last Godzilla movie was a bit of a white lie, but they but this movie is a lot of fun. It's you don't really have to have seen the first Godzilla or any of the other MonsterVerse movies to really understand. It's helpful, but if you're just there to see monsters just beat the crap out of each other, then this is for you.
Cool. I have to admit, I have never heard of this one. This was new to me, so that's exciting. That sounds like a lot of fun. I like monster movies when they're done well. I have not liked most of this recent Godzilla. I haven't really liked any of them, to be perfectly frank. They're not my cup of tea, but when they are done well, it can be fun. So again, to take a hard left, for that is my final choice. Final recommendation is a musical, yay, called The Slipper and the Rose. And this is a very underrated musical. This is a take on Cinderella. And so back when I very first started my channel, I did a whole series on Cinderella. That was the first series I ever did. And so I covered The Slipper on the Rose. I've talked about it a lot on my channel. I love Slipper and the Rose. It's so funny and so charming, and it has songs from the Sherman Brothers, who of course were most famous for Disney and Mary Poppins, and they're charming and fun, and they have a pretty empowered Cinderella, I would say. Like, instead of him finding her and kind of rescuing her, she's actually the one that has to decide to go back to him, because he's gonna be a part of a not very happy marriage, and so she has to decide what she's going to do. And so the ending's pretty good, and it's just really charming, especially the music.
Yeah, I had never heard of this one, and I thought that a- I had been appraised on all of the live action Cinderella movies. I knew about Ever After and a lot of the other made for TV ones, but this is one that I had never heard of.
Mm-hmm. I think you'd like it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, what is your last pick?
So my last pick is from 19, having a brain fart. It is it, my let me start over. So my last pick is one of my all-time favorite musicals. To tie into the whole musical connection, it is Guys and Dolls. This is one of my favorite musicals ever, and it's a movie to me that just never gets old. It tells the story of a gambler named Sky Masterson, played by Marlon Brando, who makes a bet with another gangster named Nathan Detroit, played by Frank Sinatra. We all know who he is. The bet is that if he, being Marlon Brando's character, Sky Masterson, can take out this church girl, and now I can't remember her name, and if he can take this church girl to Havana for a night, then he'll win $1,000. And Sky Masterson, being like, I've never met a challenge that I didn't like, he decides to take him up on it. Turns out to be a lot harder than he imagined. This is one of those musicals that I came across very early, and so it's really seated up there in my head. I've been in several productions of it. I was a musical theater kid growing up, so I've been in several productions of it, and it's one of those musicals that nobody talks about, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think everybody should. It's especially sad because it stars two all-timers in Marlon Brando and in Frank Sinatra. I mean, Marlon Brando would win Oscars for Streetcar Named Desire and Godfather, and Frank Sinatra is one of the best voices of all time. Like, he had a golden throat, and we'll never see another like him.
Yeah, we need to just do an all musical episode one of these days, because I forget that would be fun.
I'd be down for that.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Yeah. So this movie, I mean, Marlon Brando is not the best singer in the world, but
he tries.
He tries.
He gets his point across.
Yeah.
He's certainly not in Sinatra's shoe closet when it comes to the singing thing, but he gets from point A to point B. He's certainly not as bad as people have made him out to be.
And they were able to make the arrangements, I think, work, and that's the biggest key. If you're going to have non-singers, then you need to put it in their range, and so that it'll sound good, unlike in Beauty and the Beast 2017. And then
so, of course, and undefined.
And then they have really fun, arrangements and choreography, and there's so many good songs in Guys and Dolls. I don't think people even realize all the good songs, like Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat. Such a great song, and Luck Be a Lady, even sung by Marlon Brando, is really good. And the what is it? If I were a bird, I'd be singing, and that she sings that song, and of
Oh,
course
I know the one.
if I were a bell, if I were a bell, I'd be ringing. And I love Adelaide's Lament. I even have a version of me singing Adelaide's Lament at a recital on my channel. Uh, I did my best. Don't judge. But I love that song. And the Vivian Blaine, played the role of Adelaide on Broadway, and she's the best. Psychosomatic symptoms, difficult to endure. So
Yeah.
I love this movie. I think it's so good.
Yeah, and this movie was directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz, who also directed a little movie called All About Eve, which I mean
Hmm.
that says it all right there. And it was also written by him, so of course the dialogue is absolutely spot on. One of my favorite jokes in the movie is that all the gangsters are waiting for the crap game to start, and then this cop that's been on them, and now I can't remember his name. I'm having a hard time today, but the cop that's always after him find
Brannigan.
thank you. Uh, Lieutenant Brannigan catches up with them, and they see them all waiting around wearing their red carnations. And he comes
Oh yeah.
across, he comes across the gangster Big Julie. I'd like you to meet Big Julie from Chicago. And and Brannigan is like, and who are you supposed to be? And Big Julie's like, I'm a scoutmaster. And Brannigan's like, don't ever walk my mother across the street.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it'd be tricky now because like the whole idea of people sort of betting over women is a little not PC these days, but like if there was a way they could make it and work it, I think it could be a really fun modern musical. I would enjoy it, if that's for sure. I mean, I love musicals, so uh
Uh,
so
and, and this movie has one of my. I'm sorry to cut you off.
no,
I
you're
just
fine.
remembered this. This has one of my favorite fight scenes in any musical ever. When 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 Sarah Brown, the church lady, goes to Havana with Sky Masterson, she gets really drunk off of drinking, all those drinks with the coconuts in them. I can't remember
Yeah.
all of them right now. And they just get into this massive street fight with the Cuban people. And there's something about fights that were made in like the late 50s and the early 60s that just they were filmed in brilliant like widescreen as possible. And it's clear that the thwop and the thwap sound effects were added in post, but just the timing is just perfect. And it just turns into this big bar fight that ends with Sky and Sarah running out into the street. I could talk about this movie for hours. I love
Hmm.
this movie to
Yeah,
pieces.
it's really fun. So there we go. That is our picks on Tubi. Let us know if you've checked out the service, if you've watched anything fun. Let us know in the comments section. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you've seen any of these films, would love to hear what you think of them. So thanks so much. It's always so much fun. And Ryan, how can people find you?
They can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RyanCam20. Then there's, of course, my YouTube channel, which is RyanCam. I've been doing episode reviews for The Mandalorian. That's been a lot of fun. Those will be dropping Friday afternoons. And then, of course, the AFI project is still going strong. My reviews for those, for the Philadelphia story, Intolerance, and the Lord of the Rings are going to be coming down the pike. The Fellowship of the Ring, I should preface. I'm not reviewing all three, though I kind of want to, but I know I gotta stick to the list.
So you're just doing the first one?
That the first one's the only one on that list.
Oh.
And I checked several times over. I'm like, Two Towers and Return of the King have got to be on here somewhere, and no, they're not.
I'm surprised they wouldn't have gone with the last one since that's the Oscar winner.
Me too, but
Mm.
I keep hearing rumblings that they may redo the list because of you
It's been a
know
while. They need to.
because the one that I'm doing is from 2007, and even then
That's
that was
old.
a redo. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a long time. That's a really long time. So they should. Anyway,
But
that sounds great. I look forward to seeing all those reviews. Some really good movies there. Make sure y'all are subscribed. And you can follow me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. And also make sure you're following the Hallmarkies podcast. We have some really great interviews coming up and just incredible coverage. We're going to just have so many episodes coming up because there's a movie every single day on Hallmark Channel Thanksgiving week. So it's going to be super, super busy. So make sure that you're subscribed over there. Also have our Patreon group where we have watch alongs, where you get behind the scenes details of movies and you get asked questions. It's really fun. And then also have our merch store, which has tons of new designs, festive designs. I'm really proud of our little store over there. So check that out. And thanks again so much, Ryan, for doing this. And we'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
bye.